Here we go. Right, hello, right, live. This is John Wedger going live. I'm with author and therapist Carolyn Bramhall, and we're in a lovely part of the country. I'm not going to tell you where though, but it is lovely. It's quite a unique place as well. And a quick rundown of myself for those who don't know. I'm a retired Metropolitan Police detective who specialised in child abuse. I'm also a whistleblower, in as much as I exposed deliberate cover-up of child abuse and prostitution, and was threatened, bullied, intimidated, nearly put in prison, all sorts of things for my efforts. So I now utilise my time campaigning for great protection for police whistleblowers, because we don't get any, and also going around speaking to victims and survivors of child abuse, and also professionals who are involved in the same sort of field. So I'll introduce now. This is Carolyn.
Hello.
And Carolyn, I was put in touch with Carolyn by a member of our group who told me to read a book. I can hold the book up. There you go. It might come out back to front, but Am I a Good Girl Yet? And this is Carolyn's life story, which is a fantastic read. I was absolutely enthralled. I read it in half a day, and brilliant. And I was encouraged to read it because someone who works closely with my little group suffers from DID, and I was unaware what DID was, and then it was explained to me it stands for Dissociated Identity Disorder. Is that right?
Dissociative
identity
disorder.
Right. Mm-hmm. And it used to be termed multiple personalities.
That's right, yeah.
And in order to sort of understand DID, you need to go into a person's background, and then you realise the reason that these different identities, which are termed alters as well,
that's right,
come to pass. Now, someone I know has got, she I think has identified 5 alters. Yourself, you're an ex-sufferer or whatever can I say of DID, but I think in your book you said about 109.
Yeah, I had 109 different alter personalities, and they're called alters, by the way, because they're alternate. They come and go, or you could also say that they're alternative ways of expressing yourself.
Well, and one of the sort of sources of all this, and it's a topic that I was warned about when I first started this campaign. I'm just going to move this slightly round like that. And it is a very emotive subject, and that is SRA, Satanic Ritual Abuse. And I think in your book you allude quite clearly to the fact that that was the origins of your suffering, as it were.
As I understand it, of course, I was thinking of the past, and you can never be sure of actual facts when you're an adult talking about a childhood memory. But all the signs are there that I was abused in a group that belonged to something very evil, something very dark, and that abused me in a ritual sense. It was horrific, it was ongoing, it was bizarre, it attacked every part of my life.
Yeah, and the thing is, so we're going to get more into, your journey and the work you do now, which I think is important to get out there. But when you talk about satanic ritual abuse, you get attacked, and you get attacked in the most vilest way. Now, we have been attacked recently, the small group I'm dealing with, by Private Eye magazine, which claims to be this sort of satirical alternative media outlet. But actually, what they've been doing is incredibly nefarious. And there's one author, sort of a journalist in particular, called Rosie Waterhouse, and she's been very, very vocal in sort of attacking not just myself and members of my group, but also victims and survivors of abuse that have come forward. And which I find absolutely appalling. And we've also will be starting up a campaign to complain to IPSO, which is the regulatory body that governs newspapers and magazines. So I encourage anyone to look on my Facebook page and and see the details of Ipso, and to private eye themselves and complain, because this is disgusting what they're doing, and this is really kicking people while they're down. Absolutely appalling. And they hide behind the guise that they are the voice of the people, and albeit that they do it satirically, and just appalling individuals. This is the thing, that as soon as we talk about these subjects that need talking about, we get attacked. But I clearly am not frightened to speak out, and I do it because a lot of people that are coming to me for assistance have suffered from this appalling, vile abuse, and it needs exposing. So, right, let's go on to yourself now, Carolyn. Now, initially, when we go from your book, life seems to carry on as normal, but there are certain things which sort of trigger you, as it were.
Yes.
And you, at the point, had no idea what was going on. Can you sort of talk to us about sort of like the early days? And
well, see, what happens is that when you're living your life as a normal individual, and then something will trigger and will remind a part of you of something from the past.
Yeah.
And so that will ring a bell, and immediately that part of you that has been created to hold that memory will come to the fore. Yeah. So the reason other parts are there in the first place is to keep you safe, is to preserve that memory that they hold apart from your consciousness. They want you as an individual not to know everything that happens. Because when a small child is horribly abused, obviously their mind is unable to grasp,
to process that information. Yeah,
a child's mind does not have the capacity to hold the fact that somebody safe, like your mother or father or auntie and uncle or somebody like that, who says they love you, who does nice things for you, like, feeds you and clothes you, could also do bad things. They don't have that capacity.
And that sort of also adds to this conspiracy of silence, why people do remain silent for so long, and won't speak out. I've had it with victims, and they've been asked in court as adults, why didn't you come forward as a child? And this sort of explains to a degree why.
Well, there are two reasons why that. One is that misplaced loyalty that happens in all child abuse cases, I would say.
Yeah.
And also, there's huge confusion because you don't know what is truth. It's very, very hard before I've become whole now, but when you're in that place, do I believe what another part of me says, or do I believe what I feel is right? And there's huge conflict there.
And we was discussing earlier about the altars, and you were saying that you had names for them.
Yes.
And how would these sort of different characters come into your life, and what was their reason for coming into your life, and what was their job, as it were?
Well, every altar has a reason for being. So, for example, the example I often give is when I was around 5 years old, my dad used to drive the car up the side of the house, and at a certain time in the night, and at that moment I knew what was going to happen next. Right. He was going to come inside and up the stairs and into my room. And so when I heard that sound, it was my cue for me to go away, for my mind to go, and for another part that I called Juju to come out and to take what went on from then onwards. She was there. She was present. So later on, when I was in my 30s, Juju would come and she would remember what happened. And when she came and talked about what happened at that point, she really believed that we were there still.
Right. Okay, so Juju was still living in that moment.
An altar has to have quite a lot of convincing from safe people on the outside that time has moved on. Right. I sometimes show somebody with DID, right. I sometimes show their face in a mirror and say, look, is this the face of somebody who's 4, or is it of a grown-up?
Do you know, that's so interesting, because in my policing career, and also more so now in the work I'm doing, like I said to you earlier, I had one guy that was a bare knuckle fighter, a traveller, and this man was just not short of 7 foot tall, and I've had him kneel down in front of me, and like a 4-year-old boy, tug at my trousers saying, "Please be my friend, don't leave me, don't leave me." And this is a guy that was an absolute animal when he lost his temper, you know. And then I've got this, like, literally a 4-year-old in front of me, and I spoke to him like a 4-year-old, and it was quite unsettling for me to see it.
Well,
It's changed.
I've got video footage of me in therapy times and with my friends in America, which is where I was when I fell apart and all of this came out. And you can clearly see the switches. And, you know, I spoke in a different voice.
Yeah.
In my mind, I was wearing different clothes. My handwriting was different. I liked eating things that I wouldn't like eating as an adult. Everything about me was different. But then it's necessary for a small child to create somebody completely different, because in their mind, Mummy and Daddy wouldn't want to hurt me, but they might want to hurt her.
And something very interesting, if you look, Carolyn's got glasses on, and your alter Juju had 20/20 vision,
Yes.
which was very...
Yes, we once went to an optician when I was in the States, and he was fascinated because he said, "You shouldn't be able to read this on the screen."
Yeah.
And I did without my glasses on. And he wasn't quite sure what to make of this, and so he asked me to come back on the Saturday when he was not working to do some more tests, and we didn't go. It was getting too near being found out for the alters.
Right, okay.
We might be discovered that the alters were there. And of course, alters are secret. They hold secrets. That's the whole point.
Right. Ah, that's very interesting.
Every altar holds big secrets. They know what really happened.
Do you know, we were having a discussion earlier, and something which I find very annoying is that you get certain clinicians that go out their way to debunk these things. They class it as false memory syndrome. Have you heard of that?
False memory syndrome is not anywhere like as powerful or as well known as it used to be, because it's really not tenable. I'm sure, having said that, to be fair, there are those who create things.
There's conditions like Asperger's where a child can watch a film and then believe they've been in there, but as a catch-all for people coming forward.
But why would, for example, I speak about myself here, but I've met lots and lots of other survivors. Why would I, as a respectable young woman from the southeast who'd never seen a horror movie in her life, I was a Christian, why would I want to create this kind of horror, the horror that I went through all the while I was in America and all the while I was in recovery, the memories I had, the nightmares, the hell I was living in? Why would I want to do that?
We've had exactly the same with a very, very good man called Michael Tarraga, who's come forward and given his testimony of the abuse he endured in the children's homes, and it's horrific. Yeah. And he's being accused now of this lady, Rosie Waterhouse, that he's a liar, he's made it up. And in all the years of investigating child abuse, I dealt with one case where a child was lying, and they fell at the first hurdle because the process of eliciting information is so comprehensive that it weeds it out. So one case in hundreds that we dealt with, this kid was clearly lying, and that was a matrimonial issue. You know, that there was acrimony, and that came out. But on the whole, when you see what the victims, how they suffer in adult life, the torture, the torment it goes through, there is no way in the name of decency and in the name of God that anyone would want to lie about this.
No, and what happens when people come to me and say, I don't know that she's telling the truth on this one? You know, I say, well, let's look at the rest of her life. Right. You know, you're not going to lie. If you're going to lie in such a big way, you won't just lie on that one thing. There'll be other parts of her life that begins to give those hints that is a bit of a pathology in them. Yeah. And if they, in every other part of their life, they are honest and truthful and a person of integrity, then you start thinking, I'm not sure this
well, the other thing also, that when kids have come from terrible backgrounds and they go to self-medicate, and unfortunately sometimes that involves Class A drugs, and that gets funded by crime, they do end up living, unfortunately, as a byproduct, a life of dishonesty. But it doesn't mean that their integrity is at question. Do you know what I mean?
No, there's some very... Well, you'll know this. There are some honest criminals out there.
Of course, yeah. Unfortunately, the law now is designed that if someone's caught shoplifting to fund a drug habit, they're classed legally as a dishonest person. And it by no means should be any reflection on the fact that they may well be telling the truth when they come forward about their abusers, you know.
No, well, I believe in people. I believe that we do what we do for a reason. And if it... Like, I can only come back to my life rather than talk about other people. I don't have the authority to do that. But I know if I've worked in any kind of way that appears to be bad, as a DID person, I've threatened people with a knife, I've been done indecent things, I've been abusive verbally. It's because part of me was terrified.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrified. And part of me was wanting to be the aggressor, to fight for my life. And it felt like I was fighting for my life.
And one of the other things that we discussed is not only will you get, they revert back to the child, the protector turns up as well. Can we talk about that? Because I've actually have seen this on quite a few occasions now. 1 minute submissive and next minute this total pole shift and this real aggressive individual comes forward.
Well, there'll be... Excuse me, I've got a cough.
No, of course, no way.
There'll be a trigger somewhere. Of course, the whole point of each altar is to protect the life of the call person.
Right.
And if a trigger like a smell, a sound, something reminds you of the past or appears in their antennae, that's a thing of danger, the protector altar will automatically come out. They have no choice. That's what they will do. Right. And they will be aggressive and they will be possibly violent, but they're that because they feel that they're in danger. It isn't because they're evil or bad in themselves. They want to fight what they see as the point of danger.
Yeah. And we were discussing also about how many people in prison that have been wrongfully diagnosed and actually are suffering from DID.
I am sure there is a huge amount, because you'll have them compliant one day and completely violent and uncontrollable another day. Those quick switches are, I am sure, because in their past they have been cruelly dealt and they've had to create these other parts in order to survive.
And if we go back to the root causes, one of the things that I've been talking about is satanic ritual abuse. Do you get many people that have been victims of SRA that end up coming to you with DID issues?
I would say 90% of the people that I see with DID are survivors of satanic ritual abuse.
Why would that be?
Well, to start with, SRA is hugely cruel, and it usually involves physical, emotional, spiritual, mental abuse, all kinds of... And DID is typically formed when there is a lot of different kinds of abuse going on. So the child doesn't know how to react next. And they have to compartmentalize their life. And so DID and SRA go together. The other reason is because there's a lot of satanic ritual abuse out there.
And what brings you to that conclusion? Because it's something I'm definitely coming to realise. And yourself, would that be because of what people are telling you?
Well, I'm assuming that the cases I hear about are only the tip of the iceberg, because I'm one person doing a little tiny ministry without a lot of with no marketing, and yet word has got round that I know a little bit about this and I believe the stories. And so churches are getting in touch and saying, please, can you help? Because this person is telling me these things.
Yeah.
and they don't know what to do. Now, if I were to put together a list of all the people and the churches that I am in contact with who are dealing with people with SRA, that's quite a list. Now, making an assumption that that is a very small percentage of what's really going on, we've got a large number.
Yeah, it's huge. And the problem is society's ill-equipped to deal with it. There's a reluctance for anyone to accept it. And when people do talk about it, they really do need specialist help. They need help with this, and there is nowhere for them to go. What would you suggest?
Well, I'm asked constantly, is there any safe place that I can send my friend, my church member, just to get away for Halloween or a birthday or Easter?
The amount of people that have been the victim of SRA say, for God's sake, do not engage in Halloween. Whatever they are really strongly opposed to it.
It's potent, yes.
Yeah, potent, yeah.
But I'm asked a lot, what help is there? And my experience now is that, well, we could send somebody away for a few days. That's not going to solve anything. It keeps them safe for a little while. My experience now, in the years I've been doing this, is to find a community of people, a whole bunch of people that can live, engage the SRA survivor in their lives and protect them in all kinds of ways in a lifestyle. And churches typically are a really good way of surrounding somebody with love and care and understanding, so that when they flip, they're not judged. When they switched, oh, this is little Susie, who is an altar or Big Susan, and that's okay. We understand why that is and know how to deal with it.
And it's finding a church group that will speak about the satanic, because there's groups that do not want to say the devil word. They don't want to go near there. A priest even said to me that had worked in Africa, said in Africa, they're all over it. They understand the dangers of the dark side of spirituality. But he said, the UK, no one wants to address it. No one wants to talk about it.
Well, I'm more optimistic than that. I've gone to churches with an incredible sense of we want to learn. A lot of churches that I go to, obviously I'm there because they want to learn themselves. But I've met some hugely sacrificial, wonderful people who say, teach us. I want to know how to help this individual. We love them. We don't know what's going on for their lives. We're a little bit frightened. We just want to help.
I mean, I've had a lot of help from people within the church come to me, but also I spoke to a lot of victims of the church, sexual abuse victims of the church. And this is the balancing act. You know, I spoke to two brothers and their lives have been destroyed by systemic abuse that went on in the name of Jesus. There's no way anyone does this in the name of Jesus unless they're evil. So, you know, there are people with hatred now of religion and things because of how they suffered.
Yes, I was just talking to somebody yesterday. She said she's not going to get near a church, but she wants Jesus to heal her. Yeah. You know, and there are ways that we can help somebody like that. But and that I find that really, really sad, because we can't, it's just like we can't say all cyclists are the same, or, you know, or everyone who owns a certain kind of car are the same, because they're not, and all churches are not the same. And churches who really honestly know and love Jesus Christ, they want to love people, they want to love victims. And it's finding a church that's live, that is a church of integrity and honesty and truth, who want to really help. And those churches are powerhouses.
There's a guy I know, a lovely, lovely guy, a very inspirational guy, and he has got an altar, and he says to me, look, Johnny, we can't go near that person because this altar is telling him they're no good, they're no good. And sure enough, it may be a month, maybe 2 months later, and something will come out in the paper about someone that wanted to help us and turned out to be a paedophile. And I say, how do you know? He said, he tells me, stay away. And his hyper sense of awareness is off the scale. Do you get that as well?
I absolutely, yes. I certainly identify with that. And well, you see, if you've been a victim of anything, your antennae is out there. You pick, you know, anyone who's a therapist out there will know that if you see somebody regularly, they will know if you've moved your chair a little bit or if you're wearing a different watch, because their eyes are everywhere.
Yeah.
And so you're going to be very sensitive. And so, you know, you certainly pick vibes up. I can pick up a victim, you know, very easily. But there was a time in my life when I was very aware of angels and demons. I could see them. I knew when they were there. I could see a demon on somebody.
Right.
And
how would that appear to you?
Well, a demon is usually something very dark.
A shadow.
It's more substantial than a shadow. And for me, they were green or black or orange.
Right.
That's just the way they were for me. But certainly the altars knew that. They straight away.
This is exactly what this guy says to me.
And Juju would say across the room, she'd shout out, "That lady has got a demon on her shoulders."
Yeah.
And then somebody would say, and she wouldn't know that lady, and somebody would say, "Actually, that lady is da 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 da." And it's like, well, that's why. You know, she's either an abuser or she's into something. And, you know, there's that sensitivity that altars have.
There seems to be a benefit sometimes of having these altars, but
yeah, there is.
you know, but then again, the wholeness is not there if you have this fractured personality.
No, and people get attached to their altars. You know, the last altar that went, Judy was the last one to go, and there's real grief there because you get to know these parts, and it's actually, they're very useful. I didn't have to ever feel fear, because whenever I was afraid, and all the altars that took the fear, one of them would come.
Right.
I didn't know what it was to be angry, because I never was angry. And then when I felt anger, when I was fully integrated, it was like, I don't know what
would there be gender issues as well? Would you get a masculine? Would you get a feminine?
Well, as a child, you can create anybody you want. So yes, I had men and women and male and female. And I certainly met alters that are not the gender of the host personality. Yeah.
Just thinking out loud, could that, in a more intense form, cause like sexuality issues within people that they could? You know?
Most people with DID have sexual issues. Most people with DID have eating issues and sleep issues. They all sort of go with it because, of course, you've got all these different parts with different kinds of routines and what have you. But sexuality is a big one for people with DID.
Yeah, it was just coming to my mind. I was just thinking
I'll tell you a funny thing, though. But when I was in America and I was going through all this chaos, one alter, Elliot, who was a boy, he insisted on always, when we were out, going into the men's loos. Which caused a few problems, you know.
I can see people using that as an excuse as well now.
Oh no! Well, don't.
Yeah, no.
Don't make a habit of that.
No. But I mean, and on a positive side, you know, at the end of the day, you need peace and things need to be addressed. How is it a case of bringing everyone together and then sending them off with love?
There's a way of doing that, and I think, see, Jesus Christ wants us to be whole people.
Yeah.
We're not made to live in this topsy-turvy, fragmented way at all. Now, the key really, in a very short space of time, and I know the therapists out there will probably think, oh, there's a whole lot more than that, but there is to each alter needs to feel safe. They need to have told their story, so they don't need to hold it separate anymore.
Yeah.
Once they've let go of that story or that overwhelming emotion, once they've told it, they don't need to be separate, so they can choose to be invited to join the host personality.
Right, okay.
So I would say, thank you, Cherubal, whoever I had. You've done such a wonderful job. Thank you for helping me so much for all those years. But now I know what you've told me. I believe your story. Would you like to join me? And they would.
Yeah.
But initially, if somebody with DID came in now, and I were to say that to them, they'd be very frightened.
Right, okay.
Because they feel that part of them would be destroyed. And it's not about that at all. Nothing is lost. Nothing is left behind. Nothing is destroyed. everything still becomes part of the whole.
Yeah, and I mean, I would never have came to you or even read the book had it not been from a good friend who helps me out, who you know as well, and as and she has it, and it's sort of understanding her and everything else that has brought me to come and speak to you. And the more I've been educated, the more I see it in people that I'm dealing with all the time. More now that I am dealing with a lot more victims and survivors of abuse than I did in the police, and also more that I'm dealing with people that have been victims of satanic ritual abuse.
Yes. There's a lot out there. We need to be aware that this is really an issue. And of course, in the society of chaos that we live in today, also having a lot more folk from very troubled parts of the world, we need to be aware that may well be happening in the people around us.
And let's just talk about the group that you've got running that I think you mentioned.
Yes, well, 10 or so years ago, I started an organisation called Heart for Truth.
Heart for Truth.
Heart for Truth. And because many Christians have a heart to know the truth, and they want to lead people who are hurting, who are fragmented, who are broken, who are troubled, whether it's a mental health issue, whether it's DID, past abuse, depression, anxiety, whatever it is. Sometimes in churches, we don't know how to help people with the best will in the world. You know, making an apple pie, sitting with them in church.
And you can really insult someone as well by being a bit airy-fairy in their approach to people.
Well, we just don't know how. And we all love the best way we know how. And sometimes a little bit more teaching is helpful. And so Heart for Truth will go to a church and help them, the church leader, or it can be a fellowship or a counselling centre, wherever. And I will teach them how they can walk with that individual over the long haul in a sustainable way to understand and to walk with them into freedom. And
the other thing I've seen is that sometimes people, when they are heavily caught up in the DID thing, that even they get physical elements. There'll be altars that can't walk, and I've seen that. I have.
Yes, I had an altar who could only use her elbows to shuffle across the road. Well, you know, as I said earlier, a child can create anything. And sometimes it's there are reasons why a person would not be certain ability. I've had a very strange therapy session once with somebody, well, it wasn't therapy, it was a helping session with somebody with DID who was deaf.
Right.
And that the host personality, the core person, was fully hearing.
Yep.
But she was totally deaf for our session and had to be speak through an interpreter. But once she integrated, she could hear.
Yeah. One of the guys that helps me, he when he really goes into it, he becomes blind. He's totally blind and walks into things. Just cannot see. Cannot see.
Yes, it's strange. I think I'm right in saying that if you photograph scan a brain when somebody is switching, you can see different parts of the brain operating in a different way.
And let's get this clear, that the altars are there as a protection mechanism. You know, they're not there to attack the host, they're there to protect the host.
Yes, the whole point is that they've got secrets that they've got to keep away from the host, the core personality. Because if they knew, the perception is that they would be overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed, right. Yeah.
Yes, and that would destroy their life.
And that person could then become suicidal or whatever.
Yes, or they might do something silly. In the eyes of an altar, the best thing is to comply with the satanic group.
Right.
That means do as they're told.
Right, okay.
Be a good girl. Hence the
title of the book.
Title. Am I a good girl yet? If I'm good, I won't be hurt.
You won't be hurt.
That's the lie.
And it's about compliance will save you the pain.
Yes. And so I know a number of survivors around the country today who are intelligent Christian adults who regularly go back to the coven or the group and are abused, horribly abused. And they do that because they've got a part of them, an altar, that is still loyal, who has to go because there's a part of them that really believes the only way they'll stay alive is to be good and go back.
Yeah, there's
perform.
There's someone. The messages are coming up, and there's a lady that I was hoping would attend today, but she's unfortunately had a bereavement abroad and had to go to it. A lady called Tracy, and she does a lot for the community, and a lot of people come to her for help and for healing, and she is very, very keen to pick your brains on certain stuff, you know. So you know, and so there's a massive scope for people that are actually helping and understanding what people are going through. So let's just, so it's a Heart for
Truth.
Heart for Truth.
Yes.
So you have a Facebook page.
We have a Facebook page and a website.
And I can encourage people. This book was, I was enthralled by it. Honest to God, this was really, really well written, and you actually put in the mindset of yourself when you go through it. It's it starts off different to it finishes, I'll say, but really, really good. And you can get this from Amazon. There's another one now.
Or from me.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, Carolyn, go to Heart for Truth and be able to get it from there. Connecting the Fragments. So I've yet to read that one, but and it's got freedom for people with DID, and that's in relation to church sort of work.
Or friends can help with this.
You know, and at the end of the day, what we're dealing with, you know, and something that I'm coming to the realisation by the day is that this is a battle between evil and good.
Yes. Oh, well, that's where it all started. It started with evil people wanting to take something pure and good like a little child and desecrate it.
And then if we go down, then something that I'm getting very passionate about is those that try and debunk. Okay, that when a theory comes out or there is a thesis on something, yeah, it should be open to peer criticism, and we all have our critics. But this goes over and beyond what certain people are doing to us and the campaign we're doing. It's vicious and it's spiteful, and the reason they're doing that is because I feel they're part of the problem, and they're out there to shut us up, because the truth of satanic abuse is leaching out. It's coming out. But the dam's burst, and it is pouring out by the day, and they can no longer hold on to this secrecy, this covert nature, that this empire they had, that, you know, it's gone now. And I really feel that the truth and the love is coming out, and people are speaking out, and we need you to keep coming out. So if there's others with quite compelling accounts that you want put forward, get in touch. And if it's applicable when I can do it and the funding's there, I will come and we can put your story out. And let's not be ashamed, because they did it to you. You never did it. They did it. They had a choice, and they chose to do the most disgusting and painful things to you, and it wasn't your fault. And we got to make that clear. And those that try and debunk us and attack us, we must look on them with incredibly suspicious eyes. And I'm staunch in my approach to that. But I can only thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Carolyn's been recommended to me by two really, really good people. And it's been a while, but we've got here. And I thank you so much. Is there any parting words?
Oh, I'm just honoured to have this opportunity. But please, folks, listen to what John says. It's important that the truth is out there.
Yeah. Anyway, right, from us, God bless and stay safe.